Also in California, a legal blow for Abercrombie & Fitch. A federal judge has ruled that the trendy retailer wrongly fired a Muslim worker for refusing to take off her headscarf. Hadi Khan worked at Abercrombie's Hollister store in San Mateo. The company claimed her headscarf violated its looks policy, which says it's part of its marketing strategy.
I really hope that they look into their policies and their practices and that they're able to reflect some changes.
So, I'm sure that many of you right now are thinking the same thing that I am. Well, actually, I'm thinking several things. First of all, do you think that this young lady, when she applied to Abercrombie, was dressed like that? Right? I will guarantee you that she was not wearing her headscarf at all. And she decided to wear her headscarf at work. Why would she not wear her headscarf when she applied for the position? Obviously because she knew she would not get hired. Therefore, we must question whether there was some type of a premeditated intent to create a problem or some type of a legal settlement. The next thing is, why in the hell would anyone, any business owner, want to have someone wearing some type of a garb, some type of a bullshit, especially if it is a retail apparel company? Let me explain something to those of you out there who do not understand what branding is, especially in the retail apparel industry. When you create a brand, especially a fashion brand, the employees that you have are a reflection of that. When you go into an Abercrombie store or a Gap store or whatever type of store, the employees should somewhat reflect that image. It's about image. Now, a good example of this is, if you recall, Tommy Hilfiger several years ago was a very hot brand. And what happened to Tommy? Well, soon enough, hip-hop so-called, quote, artists and rap so-called, quote, artists, these thugs started wearing Tommy Hilfiger clothes on their rap videos. And then, of course, you can imagine what happened thereafter. White thugs, black thugs began requesting these clothes. They began buying these items. And so what happened? The brand was flushed down the toilet. Consumers with higher incomes did not want to wear those items anymore. And the brand was flushed down the toilet. So when you create a brand, a retail brand, you are projecting an image. And that image enables you, if you're successful with your marketing pitch, to charge a premium price for your clothing. Now, let me just go ahead and say, I'm not an Abercrombie guy. I'm not a brand name guy. I've never been. That's kind of a mental midget mentality, in my opinion. It's a follower mentality. I can't recall any point in my life that I was, I wanted a name brand clothing item, other than maybe when I was 13 or 14 or 15. But I was never really a person that wanted. Matter of fact, I stay away from that type of thing because it shows mental weakness. And I've never bought anything from Abercrombie. I've been in the stores only for analysis, for investment purposes, to check and see what's going on. And I've checked many of the clothing items. Many of them are very high quality. They're quality made. And I have seen some items that I would like to buy. I would buy, except for the fact that they're branded with Abercrombie, and of course the sister store Hollister. They have this name all over the clothing items, which there's no way in hell I would wear that. So the point is I'm not an Abercrombie guy, but as an investor, as a businessman, I understand the importance of branding. and how a company must preserve and protect and defend its brand. Once that brand is destroyed, the company is in deep trouble. The CEO, Mr. Jeffries, in the past he's made some statements in the press that have offended many people in this politically correct world. He said things such as, I only want cool people wearing my clothes, I don't want fat people or unattractive people wearing my clothes. Now, of course, that's initially going to sound outrageous, right? But the fact is that he's speaking the truth. He does not want losers or fat people or unattractive people to wear his clothes, because that is an image. In other words, when you are wearing Abercrombie or Hollister clothes, most of these items have Hollister or Abercrombie all over the place, right? There's sweatpants or other items, t-shirts. So it's kind of an advertisement, and that's one reason why I would never wear any branded type of apparel, because I'm not going to pay to advertise for a company. It just shows the stupidity of people. Nike is very famous in doing that. So why would I pay for that, right? I'm not going to pay. They need to pay me to advertise for them. So Mr. Jeffries figures, hey, if we're going to have these clothing items with Abercrombie name and the Hollister name plastered all over them, I don't want fat people wearing my clothes. I don't want people to see fatzos wearing my clothes or unattractive people, which I understand. However, on the other hand, if you are going to be selling clothing items with your name, your company's name on those clothing items, that's the risk you have to take, okay? That's the risk that you have to take. If you're looking for free advertisement, Mr. Jeffries, then you have to take that risk that fat asses are going to wear your clothes, okay? Now, he can want whatever he wants, right? He's just basically stating his preference. And of course, those public statements, I'm sure, turned off a lot of people, which was probably what his intent was. Nevertheless, the fact of the matter is that this Equal Opportunity Workplace Act or what have you, it should have no place, or should have an exception when you're talking about the branding issue. The problem is I'm sure that the defense, or in this case Abercrombie, to pose this argument is too sophisticated for the court system. It's too much of a sophisticated argument to explain what branding is and the importance of branding. But this just goes to show you it's a perfect example of how these ridiculous laws are destroying this country. If I own real estate intended to be rented out to individuals, I should be able to determine who I rent that real estate out to. Why? Because it's my property, and I have a financial interest in that property. And who you decide to rent your property out to could very well determine the fate of that property and or the future potential to rent it out into other individuals. The same thing with the business. If I'm running a business, I should have the right to determine who I want to hire. If I'm spending a lot of money training my employees for several years, and I happen to have hired several female employees, for instance, then they decide to go and get pregnant. Many of them don't return to work. I've lost a lot of money, haven't I? Right? But I'm not able to discriminate. I'm not able to use that in my own personal argument or publicly stated argument as a factor or criterion when making hiring decisions. But these are things that should be permissible. If an individual has a valid argument as to why they favored or disfavored an individual in hiring practices or rental practices or any other type of business interest, then that should be heard and it should be acknowledged. End of story. The problem is, of course, is that this is not being done, and the history behind all that is in terms of who brought these ridiculous laws to the workplace. That is, of course, the Jewish mafia. And they've done that as part of their mission to create a society that is more accepting of feminists, of gays and lesbians and so forth. I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole other issue. If you don't want to believe that, that's your choice. But I'm just stating facts. Anyway, I just wanted to point this out, and I'm sure many of you will agree with me. Even if you are a Muslim, you need to understand and accept the fact that if you have a Muslim store, a Muslim culture store, you're not going to want to have some bimbo slut working there or some loser guy that does not reflect the values behind that store, right? Abercrombie, just like every other retail apparel store, is reflecting a certain culture, certain values, or many would say lack of values, right? I don't agree with the image of Abercrombie. I think it's pretty disgusting. But they have a right to create a business based upon that. And obviously, this whole Muslim getup that she's wearing is a complete antithesis towards what they're trying to promote. Finally, I'd like to ask why this young lady, this Muslim, why she would even want to work at a place that promoted vile behaviors, open, disgusting sex. I mean, you can just look at the images that they use. Does that not seem to be against the Islamic principles? So I think at the end of the day, the judge should have questioned her motives. But of course, this is not how things are done. Things are done to destroy the freedoms and liberties that we have or have once had in this country, and it's really becoming a big problem. Hopefully people will stand up at some point and do something, take real action. And I would recommend violent action against the establishment. We need some violence in this country. And I'm talking about some radical violence. We need some radical violence to protest against the Wall Street criminals who have raped us, who have raped the world, yet have not gone to prison. We need Americans who have some backbone, who are more determined to use their guns when appropriate, rather than to bitch and moan when they think the government's going to take away their guns. If you're not using your guns when you should, do you deserve them?